Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Do you want some draft prospects that the Knicks should go after with their 24th, 25th, and 38th picks? Well, this is just the episode to you. Third part of our draft preview coming up right now.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. So we are here for you guys still 5 days a week, even during the off season. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Stricklands. You can find thestrick.land. And I'm joined by my two buddies once again, Albert Ghim and Corey Tulaba of No Ceilings. One of my favorite places to get draft information. These guys are the ones that I had to go to get my first taste of the draft this year as we all start diving into the draft with less than a month now until the draft goes off, about 20 days roughly, I think, until we'll be drafting. So yeah, definitely a great discussion over these three parts. First part, if you haven't watched already, last week talked just an overall primer with them. What's the deal with this draft class? Is it really as weak as everybody says? The general consensus was no. Then in last episode, talked about Zach Edey and Ryan Dunn, two guys that I had kind of highlighted that stood out to me in my first pass of this class of guys that could potentially be good Knicks fits, especially for a Tibbs coach team. But then this episode, I kind of just let Corey and Albert rip and said, hey, who are some of your favorite prospects? Like, I want to know. Give me some names. Give me some guys to look at. And they didn't disappoint. So let's get right into it with Corey and Albert's best fits for the Knicks in this episode. All right, I want to make this a little more open-ended now. So excluding the two names we talked about already, I'm curious, like if I were just to ask you guys to pull a name out that you think is a guy that you think would be a good fit on the Knicks this year in their reasonable range. So we'll say someone that you consider to be from maybe your 15th on in this draft, or roughly consensus 15th on, just because I think that, once you hit that point, it's like, okay, that anyone from 15 and beyond in this draft could reasonably go to 30, depending on how teams feel or whatever. I think maybe there's some other guys that are even in the top, I don't know, from 10 to 15 or something that feel about that way too. But I don't know. I'll throw it to you, Albert, first. Like, who would be a guy that you would look at and be like, I think this is a Knicks type of guy, and I think this is a guy that they should go after, whether it's with their picks or trying to modestly move up or whatever the case may be.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to consolidate this to maybe like 2-3 guys.
Yeah, you can do that. If you want to do a couple of quick hitters, that's great too.
For sure. I'll try to keep it quick. But the first guy, he did not go to Villanova, but he gives some Villanova vibes.
Okay.
Because he's an absolute dog of a competitor. He cares about the right things. He's not being talked about a ton in this class. He's kind of going to be kind of unheralded. I think he might even be there at 38, which is unfortunate because I think he deserves to go earlier than that. But he might go 38. He might even go later than that. But a guy that I just wrote about, I love his game, and I would love him as a backup to Julius, because when we traded Obi Toppin, and I know we got OG Anunoby, whatever, but having like a nice backup four, I think is another nice luxury that this team could use. And so the guy that I want to pitch to you first is a guy named PJ Hall from Clemson. I love his game so much. In my piece, I comped him to Naz Reid, Tom Gugliotta, and Troy Murphy were my comps for him, right? Which is a crazy trio of guys. And I know it's pretty wild, but The reason why I love Hall is because, number one, he is a ferocious rebounder, a guy that is pretty good at boxing out, which I know is a lost art. A guy who was asked to was a part of a two big lineup with him and Ian Shefflin. Showed some real passing chops. Can defend the rim. He's grown as a rim deterrent, rim defender. Blocked a ton of shots this year. Is athletic, moves well, and can shoot it from outside. Now, I know his percentages from outside weren't great, but also I think it was a situational type of thing. Recently, we talked to a prospect. We did a film breakdown with the prospect, and he was like, hey, I was in the gym with him, and he hit like 12 threes in a row. So, and he was shocked, and he was like, man, this guy can really shoot. So PJ Hall's my first guy, and I'm like really hoping and praying he ends up on this Knicks team, because if you turn on his film, he's like shouting a lot because he cares about everything on a basketball court, and he's pumping his chest and he's like screaming at people. Great communicator. Just, I love him. And I think he's got great size, length, athleticism, all that stuff. So he's my first guy. Second guy that I wanted to bring up, and I'll be faster with the second and third guys, but another guy who I think is interesting just because he was our number one guy coming into the season, and he's really fallen off. But I think defensive tools and outside shooting and all that stuff, and because of the season that he had at Kentucky, he might fall, and he might be there at 24, 25, is Justin Edwards from Kentucky, a guy that I think the Knicks really need to give a hard look at, especially if he's still there on the board, because he's 6'8", a guy who came in and he was McDonald's All-American, right? He was at the Nike Hoop Summit, all that stuff. A guy who didn't have the season that he wanted at Kentucky, but if he's there, I think the Knicks should give Corey. He's still in the draft, right? Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not wrong on that. But a guy that the Knicks should definitely consider, because the defensive ceiling with him, the offensive ceiling with him is really, really high. And if you have a couple of picks like the Knicks do, taking a shot on him would be really interesting. The last guy that I want to bring up, this is a hard one, but I'll do only one more. Another guy didn't have the best freshman season, but came into the season heralded. Everyone was really excited about him. Went to Baylor, didn't have this best season, but Jacoby Walter, another guy that I think the Knicks should look at, because another guy who he's like 6'5"-ish, right? Maybe he doesn't have like the crazy height and length that you're looking for, but is a good shooter. I think just had a tough season for Baylor. But if you get a distressed asset like that in a Justin Edwards or a Jacoby Walter, and you give them some time to develop on this Knicks team like Deuce McBride did or Quentin Grimes did, I think you might end up finding real gems in those two guys. I have a bunch others that I think would be great for the Knicks, but those two specifically, right? So my hope and prayer would be like, maybe we spend 38 on PJ Hall, but at like 24, 25, if you went like Zach Edey and Justin Edwards, or Zach Edey and Jacoby Walter, I think that would be a great situation where you take a guy like Edey with a high floor, and then you kind of shoot, you're kind of going for the swinging for the fences with a Justin Edwards or Jacoby Walter, guys who are real, really, highly ranked guys that just didn't have great freshman seasons. I think that'd be a great situation for the Knicks.
So Corey, I'll throw it to you, but Albert, keep thinking, because honestly, I'm not going to stop you from going off. You got like three more names, because I think you made really good cases right there.
Okay.
And honestly, you know better than me. Me throwing darts at a board is a little different than you throwing out educated takes. So think on those for a second.
Sure.
And I'll have Corey go over some guys that he likes, and then we'll just bounce back. I can sit and do this all night. I love this. This is great. All right, we'll be right back in, and we'll get Corey's take on who the Knicks should draft, and then followed by another chance for Albert to give some more prospects, since he had so many on his brain. I had to let him go ahead and list all of them, because why not? Knicks fan and a draft guy. It's no better mix than that. But first, I got to let you all know it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. And maybe if you want to go ahead and try to make a little bit of money off the NBA Finals here, the Mavericks plus 200 in Game 1. I don't know. They're the team that's had to go on the road, that's had to go through the trials and tribulations this whole postseason. Even if they win game one, I don't know if they win the series for sure because Boston is just so talented. But I don't know. Maybe they're going to be able to pull this one off. Like I think there is a chance that they steal game one on the road just by virtue of being a little more battle tested this postseason and having to deal with road game ones and road game twos for every series so far this year. I don't know. I think maybe they're worth betting on a plus 200 there. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon again and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So, but Corey, who's a name or two or even three if you want to that you think would be
sure.
Good
I don't. I mean, he's almost undoubtedly not going to be there in the 24-25 range. Definitely a guy you would have to trade up for, and even then it would be difficult. But I won't touch on him because of that much. Maybe a guy that Knicks fans are familiar with a little bit because he was a Big East guy, and that's Devin Carter from Providence. Seems to be kind of getting some lottery buzz now, but he is the most Tibbs guy of all of the Tibbs guys, probably like 6'3" guard, 6'9" wingspan, had the best athletic testing probably of all of the guards, shot 37% from three on 7 attempts a game this year, can play above the rim. Like he's a very Tibbsy guy, but on a more realistic note, I would say a guy who I think is interesting, who is unheralded. He could be a guy that is more of a first rounder. He hasn't got really any buzz outside of no ceilings. And it's Nique Clifford from Colorado State. He played a few years at Colorado. And it's I think a little bit telling that most of the guys who don't get buzz and they're not on these mainstream boards, they have to like go to Portsmouth and then they get to go to the G League Elite Camp. And if they play well there, they can maybe go to the Combine. He just straight up got a Combine invite. And like No Ceilings is the only board that had him ranked for the vast majority of the year. Even now, like ESPN has him in the 90s. I think The Athletic has him in the 80s. But he's been a guy that we've looked at as like a first round talent for a lot of the year. Albert and I got to break down film with him very early on in the year. He was a big reason that Colorado State team made the tournament and then absolutely waxed that Virginia team in the first game. But he's almost like, if I had to describe him stylistically, it's like, what if you made Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart into one player? Now, I know that sounds amazing and he should go like the kind of guy that should go first, but I kind of mean just like the role player version of those guys. Like he's a little bit bigger than Josh Hart. And he's like, but he's strong, he rebounds, but he kind of defends like more like Mikal. And he can like shoot a little bit. He could pass a little bit. He's just a really solid player that I think, is the kind of wing that the Knicks tend to value. So I think he's a really interesting name. I think another Knicks style point guard is another guy that we got to break down film with. And he's a guy that if you took him in one of the 20 picks, I wouldn't personally think it was too high, but I think most people would probably target him more with the second round pick. And that's Jamal Shead from Houston. He's a 6'1" guard, but he's very strong. He struggles with his shot, but he is an absolute freak defender, a winner, an amazing playmaker. I think he was close to a 40% assist percentage this year. Doesn't turn the ball over a lot. I mean, he's just like, he's an absolute winning kind of guy. And I think that he's not sexy because, he's not like this big time offensive scorer, although he did take that load on this year at Houston, but like Houston just wins. And like, that's just all they do. And if Jamal Shead doesn't get hurt, they probably beat Duke, and who knows how far they go. They might be the national champions this year. If he doesn't go down, he was the primary reason that they ended up losing ultimately. And then, I think like lastly, and he doesn't necessarily have the Tibbs Knicks personality, but if we're talking about big guys, and we're talking about swings, and we're talking about a team that turned a Mitchell Robinson, a guy who also had a ton of question marks coming into the NBA and had reason to drop. I think Kel'el Ware is interesting. He was one of those, similar to Justin Edwards, McDonald's All-American, all of the accolades, 5-star, went to Oregon as a freshman, really didn't play hard. His coach kind of dogged his effort a lot. He transferred to Indiana, played for Mike Woodson, and had a really, really solid year. And I saw him twice this year in person, and neither time was I like, wow, look at this guy dogging it. Like, now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't like, this is Mr. Motor over here, but it wasn't like this guy's not playing hard, and he's talented. He shot 40% from 3 this year. He's on like a little over 1 attempt a game. He looks like a guy who maybe will be able to shoot it one day. I wouldn't bank on it, but he's a legit 7'1". He's got like a 7'6" wingspan. I think he broke the combine record for athletic testing. Like in general, I think he had like the greatest athletic testing of all time or something at the combine this year, something crazy. So like, if you're looking for the next kind of Mitchell Robinson kind of guy, like it might be Kel'el Ware.
Yeah. And there's a pretty easy case to be made that the Knicks would be in on him too, considering who his coach is,
Right.
which is the Knicks' former
yeah.
head and then assistant coach in Mike Woodson. So if any team is going to have that pipeline, like what the Knicks had for years with Kentucky, where Leon Rose is like BFFs with John Calipari, and was able to get those scouting reports on guys like Emmanuel Quickly, maybe that's where you get a guy like Kel'el Ware, and you get sort of the scouting report that nobody else is going to get, at least not as in depth as you would get from Mike Woodson, because Woodson honestly might even try to steer him towards the Knicks. Like, that's a thing that coaches do. If they have they're going to give you the better outlook for their guy potentially. And especially if they're, talking to the player themselves and the player's like, yeah, I think I would dig playing for the Knicks. Like, Woodson might be like, hey, I got you. I mean, I know those guys, so I'll put in the best word possible for you, and we'll see if we can get you on the Knicks. Which honestly, if I was a big man, I would love to play for the Knicks, because they are one of the most big man friendly teams in the NBA. And that, like, if you're even coming in there as the third guy to start with, you'll probably have a chance to play some your rookie year, which is not something you could say in every stop in the NBA right now. All right, we'll be right back in to hear Albert's final picks for the Knicks, guys that he thinks could be good fits with those 24th, 25th, and 38th picks. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And we all carry around different stressors, big and small. And when we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get these things off your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever is weighing you down. And sometimes it's not so simple as one giant thing that's, pulling you down at any given moment with your mental health. Sometimes it's just a lot of little things add up. It's like Legos or something, sometimes the complete picture is built up of a bunch of tiny things. So, your mental health is worth taking care of, even if it's just a bunch of little things that you think maybe are too trivial to talk about. They're definitely worth talking about. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. You can get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. But Albert, with a little more time to think, I'm going to throw it back to you for a couple more. Who are some names that spilled over from the first group of names that you had there before we close things out here? Because you guys have been ridiculously generous with your time, and I appreciate so much giving me so much to think about here on this show.
I think the first thing that I want to say is I could not love Corey's pitch at the end for Kel'el Ware more, because the parallels between Ware and Mitchell Robinson are kind of like eerily similar, right? And I think it's like the biggest thing with Ware is the size, the athleticism, right? Mitchell Robinson, when we took him in the second round, a lot of people were like, who the hell is this guy, right? But what stuck out when we took him was, oh, he's legit 7 foot, 7'1", right? And he is really athletic. Those seem like good things, right? And he's going to block shots, and who knows what he'll become, right? Kel'el Ware, very similar, 7'1", huge wingspan, very athletic. who knows what this guy could become. And especially once again, in this context where we're not going to ask him to come in and be a starter, or maybe not even our second center, could be an incredible opportunity for him to learn some of the things from a guy like Mitchell Robinson, where it's like, oh, you've already been through this and you've been here a ton of years. I can learn from you. Guys like Isaiah Hartenstein, who kind of bounced around in the league before he finally found his home with the Knicks. So I think that could be a great situation. So I love that Corey shouted him out. A couple other guys that I wanted to bring up. The first one, I don't know if he's going to be there when the Knicks pick at 24, but we don't know where anyone's going. We don't even have a consensus top 5 in this class. So I wanted to say Tristan Da Silva from Colorado. Now, I know Corey mentioned Nique Clifford from Colorado State, but Tristan Da Silva played for Colorado, 6'9" guy, 6'8", 6'9", a guy who shot 40% from the 3-point line this season, 83.5% from the free throw line. A guy that I got to see up close in person against UCLA, was with them during shoot-arounds, got to stand right next to him. He's huge. He's got a great physique, a guy who can really shoot the ball, but a guy that is he's very easily going to fit in with almost any roster, right? I saw recently someone comped him to like a Cam Johnson type of situation, and I don't hate that, right? I think with Da Silva, he could be that type of player because he is such a good outside shooter, right? A guy who also can play back to the basket a little bit. So if he ends up in a switch, ends up with a small on him, he's not going to be lost. He's going to know what to do. He's going to be able to take advantage of those situations. But just a guy who's a good team defender, he's going to fight on the boards a little bit, not a great rebounder, but just a guy who knows how to play basketball, but also has some real shooting to him. And I think that should be intriguing considering his size as well. Another guy that I wanted to throw in there was this one. Oh, so I know that you mentioned Tyler Smith when we were chatting before, when we were texting about it. I think Tyler Smith is tricky just because he's got there's a lot of growing that needs to happen defensively for him. So maybe if the Knicks are like, yeah, not now, but 3 years from now, and all we're going to do is teach him defense, then yeah, sure. Like, very intriguing option. A guy who's got good size, can shoot the ball from outside, is athletic, but just needs a lot of work defensively, I think, is the biggest thing with him. The last guy, so a couple names that I want to throw out to you for like later on in the draft. Like, let's say we trade back and we end up in the 40s and 50s. Just a couple of names really quickly. A guy that Corey knows that I hated for a long time, but now I'm like completely back in on, Harrison Ingram from UNC, a guy who really worked on his physique when he transferred over there, a guy who really worked on his outside shot, but also when he played at Stanford, a guy that could handle the ball, can play make a little bit, has good size to him, I think is intriguing. And then guys like Kashad Johnson from Arizona, 6'8", 6'9", really athletic, can rebound, can block shots, can do a lot of different things on the floor. And then also Pelle Larsson from Arizona, which I know he's not like super popular with even our like No Ceilings crew, but I know, I think it was Maxwell who recently wrote about him and was like, he's an intriguing wing. He's got good size and could shoot it from outside. He's just not like, he doesn't really pop off the screen ever, but he'll like, randomly have like 15 points in the game. You're like, oh, he did that. So I don't think that's like the greatest pitch for Pelle Larsson, but a guy that like when I watched him in person, I was like, oh, you're big, like you're a big wing and you can shoot it. So maybe there's more to you. But the main names that I once again, I love Corey's shout out for Kel'el Ware. But guys like PJ Hall, I'm telling you, like if Tibbs got into a gym with PJ Hall and just talked to the kid, it's like if Tyler Hansbrough was good at basketball type of situation, just like a psycho who has like real athletic ability and good size and length, physique, and can shoot it from outside. I would love for the Knicks to take a bet on a guy like that. Is my pitch for the New York Knicks this year.
All right. Well, this has been everything I wanted and more. Thank you guys so much for taking so much time to talk prospects with me and to start my draft research in earnest, because I will certainly be taking some of these names and hitting YouTube and seeing what I can find and start drawing my own conclusions about some of these guys. And hopefully a lot of the people listening here feel the same way. But, of course, if you want to get more information, check out No Ceilings. They have big boards. They have tons of articles that are coming out. They have podcasts. They have video breakdowns. They have interviews with some of these players where they break down tape and everything else. There's so much good stuff that you guys are putting out. I think you are like I said, the vibes are perfect and the content is right there with it. Like everything is great about the site. I love everything you guys are building over there. Before we get out of here, is there anything in particular you guys want to pump up? Any of your pods or articles or anything else before I send you guys on your way to go get a good night's sleep or whatever? Because we've taken way too long here.
Depending on when this comes out, it'll probably be out on the No Ceilings podcast feed. Albert and I just sat down, had a really, really great conversation with Damian Wilkins, former NBA veteran, who is now the general manager and head of basketball operations at the Overtime Elite. So we had him on the No Ceilings podcast, and we talked about, like the Overtime Elite program, and then some of the prospects, which include Alex Sarr and Rob Dillingham and Tyler Smith and Ethan Almanza and the Thompson twins, like all those guys who came out of the Overtime Elite program. So I thought that was a really interesting conversation and really interesting perspective on like youth basketball, but also like the guys who they've developed and the difference in their development versus, maybe grassroots basketball in general. And then, we also have Albert and I have a film breakdown with Pitt's Bub Carrington, who's a really intriguing player who I think is probably going to be gone by the next pick, but also might not be. And he's a 6'5" point guard who is one of the best pull-up shooters in the draft, one of the best playmakers, and also the youngest domestic prospect in the draft. So that'll be out on No Ceilings YouTube channel. And I thought it was a really, really fun conversation breaking down film with him. So that'll be out on the No Ceilings YouTube, and then NoCeilingsNBA.com. I think we have stuff going up every single day, maybe twice a day, some of the days leading up to the draft. Draft guides coming out soon. It's draft season. It's crazy over here.
Yeah.
Only thing for me, Alex, is Knick fans, Julius Randle's really good at basketball is the only thing I'll say.
Stop forgetting about that. Everybody needs to stop.
All NBA Julius Randle, multiple All NBA Julius.
Yeah,
Randle.
I need to stop getting the daily YouTube comment of like, trade that bum Randle, he's not a winner. Like, if I could stop getting that comment every single day, I would be a happy man. It's a weird battle.
Hey, Alex, it's first time, long time. I want to talk about that bum Julius Randle over here. We got to get that guy off out of the garden.
Honestly, all the love to Knicks Fan TV, but thank God we're not a call-in show. I don't know if I would have the right amount of show for that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll have more great draft coverage coming your way, although this was certainly the start of all starts here. But we'll keep trying to get some awesome guests on, maybe even these guys back on again a little closer. If some workout news starts coming in, get some more takes on the prospects. But of course, once again, keep it locked to No Ceilings. That's NoCeilingsNBA.com. If you want to check them out there, you can find all their work there, and educate yourself a bit. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you all soon. Peace out, everybody.